For over 30 years, Linda Slack-Cruz has built teams both within the corporate world and in what she likes to call her passionate world. In the corporate world, Linda specialized warehouse management and safety. In the passionate world, she used these strengths as a guide in the Himalayas, and today is the owner of Tahoe Dog Days, providing training, hiking, and networking for safe, happy, and healthy pets. Linda believes creating real change takes a team. In the Himalayas, this meant bettering the quality of living by installing toilets, showers, water tanks, and warehouses in the Annapurna and Everest regions. Who knew?
Who knew?
Luckily, she leads Team Bark for Life, fundraising in honor of canine caregivers and pets lost to cancer. Linda's happiest when she is lacing up her hiking boots. She considers her boots an extension of herself, strong, sturdy, and willing to climb tall mountains. Amen. She is not training on the importance of pet wellness. You will find when she is not training on the importance of pet. Oh my God! I can't do it, but okay.
Jeremy, stop tickling.
Was that in there?
On the importance of pet wellness, you will find her hiking with dogs as a service to those with time constraints. Linda lives in Tahoe Vista with her wife Ramona Cruz and Shiloh, their border collie.
Thank you. So to add to that, then of course, anything to do with the animal shelter right now, that's my update for the bio. So this morning, we're going to talk about bleeding management, and I'm going to show you a technique for how to follow bleeding protocols. So there's three types of bleeding. There's arterial bleeding, which is bright red spurting, continuous blood. Venous bleeding, which is a continuous flow of dark red blood. And then there's capillary bleeding, which is just a superficial, like scrape, and it's just oozing. So for today's training, we're actually using a wolf, but because it's a stuffed animal that's easy to use, we're gonna say that the injury today is going to be on this animal's leg. If you are working with bleeding protocols, anytime there's an injury to a paw, a tail, a leg, those are the easiest as far as following the actual protocols. If you have an injury on the side or on the side of the head or something like that, you can't do some of the protocol. So the first thing you want to do, I want you to think of blood as a river. If you're looking at a river, as soon as you start to elevate something, a river can't flow uphill. So our first thought when we do a bleeding protocol is we want to elevate the injury. So in this case, we're going to say the injury is right here. I'm elevating it, so I'm going to stop the flow of blood. I'm going to slow it down because once I lift it, it's going to just go back. So in this case, we're lifting it. When you do that, you want to make sure that you don't injure the animal anymore by grabbing too hard on an injury. So you just be careful when you're lifting it that you're not adding to the injury. So the first thing you want to do, I actually left out a step, and I want to make sure I cover this. Anytime you have an animal that is injured, you want to muzzle it. So an animal that's injured, that is in pain or is going to be moved to pain, will bite. So you want to muzzle it. And you do that by just, and this is a total episode by itself, a little segment by itself, but just for today, you wrap it around the muzzle, you go back behind the ears, grab it off, come back under, and you be careful when you're sliding it under on the muzzle that you don't get in the animal's mouth and get bit. You bring it back, and you tie it off. Yeah, this one's not as good. So all this is doing is it's just keeping the animal's mouth contained, so if you're working on it, it's not going to spring back and actually bite you. All right, so we've got a muzzle, we've got the leg elevated. The first thing you want to do is apply pressure to the wound. And you do that with 4x4 gauze pads. So you add the first one, and you actually wait for 60 seconds, and you want to see if it slows down the bleeding. So I want you to think about this as if it's scabbing over. So you put this on, you wait 60 seconds, and you never remove this because once you do, then it's like removing a scab. So if you still see blood coming through after 60 seconds, you add a second gauze. Whoops. You add a second one. If you still see bleeding again after another 60 seconds, you add the third gauze. After you've done this 3 times, and you pretty much do everything in 3s, if it still hasn't slowed down, you're actually going to put pressure on the artery, and it's usually 2 to 3 fingers right across inside the leg. And again, you're trying to put direct pressure that's actually going to slow down the bleeding. You wait again 60 seconds, see if it's slowed down, another 60 seconds, watch to see if it's slowed down, another 60 seconds. And then if it's ready to go, or it still hasn't slowed down, you just want to bandage it and get it to the vet. So to bandage an injury, you start, and you want to think about this as like a backwards, like taking a toilet paper roll and rolling it backwards. So you keep it as close to the injury as possible. You don't want to pull it out because then you won't have constant pressure all the way along the wound. So you go to the bottom, start at the bottom, and work your way all the way up to the top of the injury site. And once you've got it, whoops, not very good gauze here. Once you've got it covered completely, you bring it out, you make the loop, come back around, and we'll tie it off. Obviously with a regular dog, they're going to be moving around. But once you tie it off, then you take the excess and you want to put that right in front of the injury site. So you press it down so it's actually giving you just a little more pressure across the wound. Then you want to actually transport the animal to the vet, and when you do, they're going to know that this is the wound site, so they will cut the bandaging away from the wound. So that's another reason for putting that. Sometimes you can just take a black marker and just put injury site, because you don't want them to cut right where the injury is. So if possible, when you're transporting the animal, you want to keep the leg elevated until you get to the vet. If you can't, sometimes you can actually use a triangle bandage or sling, and depending on where the injury is, you can actually wrap it and hold it away from the animal. It obviously would work better if you have 2 people. A lot of people have asked me if I'm hiking, how would I deal with an animal that's injured? You do the best that you can, but a lot of times I'll carry 2 of these. If I had to, I'll make slings and actually hold the animal as close to me as possible. I don't have 2 slings with me today, but I'd wrap it, put one on one shoulder, one on the other, keep the animal as close to my body as I can, and transport it that way. And that's really only if the animal is small enough for me to do that. Yeah. So you do what you can with what you have to work with. Always remember you are the first responder, and whatever you do is better than not doing anything. That's your leading protocols. Any questions?
I assume when you hike, you take that your makeshift muzzle with you.
Yeah.
I know years ago when I volunteered for a vet, hosiery also works.
Yeah, it's whatever you have.
Right.
A belt, anything, any kind of, even a sling would work, or a leash if you're hiking. So it's whatever you have available to you. When I hike with an animal, I always have my first aid kit that has their supplies in it as well as mine. And a lot of what we use is exactly the same as what we use for humans. In fact, if you're doing the bleeding management, the best thing to use is vet tape. It's too expensive for demonstrations, but for, you know,
it's the stuff that
it's
adheres
sticky,
to itself.
yeah, and it makes it so much easier. But for a demonstration, we just use the gauze, which is kind of a pain in the butt sometimes. But you know, when a lot of people are working on it, it's easier. So yeah, I always carry a muzzle. Always have extra leashes. Always have extra, triangle bandages if needed. And you know, everything that I do here is just a brief demo of what I would do in a class. So you would actually have hands-on. You do this 3 times until I know that you've got it down. So this is really just to give you a quick demonstration of what a class looks like. So.
I could see that it would be pretty wise to try and put a muzzle on
a
well dog,
yeah,
before you tried it when he's herding.
Yeah, because you don't really know what they're going to do. So.
That was my point of thinking when you were doing all of that, is that how do you calm the dog to begin with to start to be able to get, because if they're injured, they're not gonna let you
Yeah.
get near what, you
Yeah.
know?
It's, you know, you have to do whatever you can, but yeah, you're right, a dog's gonna probably try to get away from you.
Mhm.
So if you can, you try to get behind it, get the muzzle on it as quickly as possible. And there's no way to calm them down, they're hurt.
Yeah.
So you just do what you can as quickly as you can. So all of our best intentions may go by the wayside. It might be get them in the car and get them to the vet. I mean, that might be, if you have a really serious bleeding injury, you know, the artery is really just spurting out. The best thing to use is like Kotex or sanitary napkin, put it right on the injury, bandage it really quickly, and just get that animal to the vet. There's nothing that you're going to be able to do. The other part is if you know that it's going to be the dog's life or their limb, then you would put a tourniquet. We don't usually recommend that, but you tighten off as much as you can and then transport them as quickly as possible. So always know that though if it's injured, you're going to have a hard time.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to do it in a demonstration, but not real life. So, any other questions?
Don't you ever swaddle a dog if you were just having too much of a problem with a towel or a blanket or something?
When I do what?
Swaddle a dog?
Swallow?
Swaddle.
Try and wrap them all
Wrap
the way
it, turn
up.
around
That's
so
what
they
I-
can't
yeah.
flail?
Yeah, and it would be the same thing for a cat. You can't work on a cat. You really just have to put a cat in what they call a cat bag and then transport it, because you'll just get ripped up. So when they're hurting, they try to hurt you. When a dog is hurting, they try to get away so nobody knows they're hurt. It's very different. So, any other questions? I haven't seen any of you in my classes yet, so.
Good to know.
That's it.
How often do you have classes?
I do them on a regular basis when people need them. I do mostly pet sitters or people in the pet industry. But certainly for anybody that has a dog, if you hike a lot, it's really good to know, just, you know, have some ideas of what the first aid protocols are. So that you're ready just in case.
Linda, did you drop any of these off at Doggone Crazy?
I don't know. I would imagine they are at Doggone Crazy.
Okay,
I'm not in
'cause-
charge of the flyers, but
Okay.
yeah, they have a couple things coming up. I'll let you know at the end. But
Yeah, because I've been keeping them posted by your Facebook page, and
yeah.
they weren't aware of some of the things. They knew about, you know, attempting to close.
Oh, I'll make sure that I talk to her then.
Yeah, Dr. Montana.
Yeah, it's just there's a group of volunteers that go out and do that, so maybe they haven't gone into
Okay.
her actual shop.
I'll be making another trip next week to my puppy, so.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, well, thank you.
German Shepherd.
I think you should do a demonstration of putting a muzzle on your new German Shepherd.
She mouthed me all day long. You can see.